A very good evening to everyone. We are just waiting a couple of minutes to let all those who are in the long queue join in. So please be patient as you settle in. I have to say that I'm delighted, Apurva, the
Hmm.
topic that you selected and chose for this particular group seems to have resonated a lot with a large number of people. So
Oh, lovely.
we've had lots of interest and registrations. So I am hoping that this will be really something. This promises to be something that's meaningful for a lot of people.
That sounds really good. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. So as I think people are going to keep joining in. But to be fair to those who are here already, a very warm welcome. And I am delighted that at Caregiver Sathi, we are offering our sixth webinar today in the theme of understanding physiological well being. And the topic that we've chosen today is Swatantrata, or freedom from anxiety and fatigue using breathing techniques and meditation. The COVID pandemic times have brought up fatigue and anxiety for almost everyone. Although I have to say that for caregivers, it is accentuated and of a different kind. But we can all benefit from this particular aspect. And as we begin our webinar today, um, I would like to take us through a little introduction about Caregiver Sathi. Caregiver Sathi is an endeavor to create an ecosystem of well-being and healing for the primary caregivers. Primary caregivers are the family caregivers of those navigating terminal illness or any other chronic or life-limiting conditions. Family caregivers tend to have unique challenges, and we believe that although they are usually invisible, they need support, and we would like to support them through their caregiving journeys and, in fact, even beyond. For that, we wish to create an environment of well being by empowering the caregiver. I think the focus here is on empowering the caregiver and helping the caregiver and the care receiver lead full lives. Like the very famous dialogue in Anand, Zindagi lambi nahi badi honi chahiye. Um, how do we do this? We do this through awareness programs, which are both online and offline, and of late are more online than offline. Psychosocial support systems, which means easy access to information and relevant content, which is something like this webinar. Healing circles, family counseling, and caregiver coaching. Building capability for caregivers, individual coaching programs, and a technology-based support system to empower caregivers through our platform and our app. We also have a volunteer program to provide respite care. We have many resources that we have built over a period of time, and the ones that are available for you so far are videos, articles, and information that can be easily accessed through our website and monthly newsletter. Over social media, we are present on some of the social media platforms, Facebook predominantly, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. We have a community both on Facebook as well as WhatsApp groups, should you be interested, and I would strongly encourage, whether you are caregivers yourself or your well-wishers of caregivers, which is a very high likelihood, then you should join the community and see how you can support as well as be supported. We have a couple of video series, one called Gentle Warriors, which are stories about caregivers. And the second one is videos and webinars by experts to help understand what is compassionate caring. It is in this theme of compassionate caring that we bring the webinar that we are bringing today. We also have an app. The purpose of the app is to help caregivers organize themselves. And one of the biggest contingencies for caregivers is their own time and their self-care. So we believe that our app can be an aid or a tool to help you organize yourself so that you can take care of yourself and by extension, look after your loved one. How can you get involved? You can get involved in many, many ways. You can join the healing circles or support groups. You can share your caregiving stories or encourage caregivers to share their stories. You can volunteer. You can donate to us. We are a not-for-profit organization and always in needs of funds. You can participate in terms of internships. We have a variety of internships that we offer. You can refer partners, hospitals, and organizations where we can create sensitivity and awareness workshops, as well as partner with them to highlight the needs for caregivers, and of course, help us spread the word both in person and on social media. I would like to highlight that we look at the well-being of a person in 7 aspects. Today we are going to deal with physiological, but if one was to look at the overall well-being of an individual, you could split it over these 7 and maybe more elements, but we are looking at 7 for now. So these would be physiological, psychological, social, financial, legal, spiritual, life and work purpose, and creative expression. Stress is caused when there is an imbalance in the well-being. And when there is unaddressed chronic stress over a long period of time, it can lead to a variety of mental health issues. With that, I would like to introduce our today's guest speaker, Apurva Jalan. I have known Apurva for a very long time, and I have to say that I'm delighted to have her not just as my yoga teacher, but also as a friend and a colleague. So we have worked in multiple relationships. And she's also on the advisory board for Caregiver Sathi. She used to work as a marketing executive in New York City and moved back to India in 2005 to pursue her passion for yoga. She's trained and worked extensively in the tradition of Sri Krishnamacharya for more than a decade now. She teaches yoga with the intention of helping people experience personal transformation and growth through simple practices. In.Breath is her organization that she has founded, and that aims to bring together a community of people striving to live with greater joy and less suffering. What else do we need? Through its offerings of yoga, self-development, and leadership, it aims to add value to people's lives by offering tools and spaces, very importantly, for greater awareness, learning, and practice. Delighted to have you today, Apurva.
Thanks, Bhavna. Very, very happy to be here in all the roles that you talked about, especially just part of the Caregiver Sathi community.
Thank you. So a few admin announcements, just as a reminder. I know there are many people over here who are familiar with these admin announcements because they are repeat participants. But for those of you who are new, and sometimes I find it useful to have admin announcements done again, we will spend the next 70 minutes talking about a discussion on the world of caregivers and how would the link on compassionate caring. The first part is a session that Apurva will take for us. During this session, I'll request you to leave your comments and questions in the chat box. We will incorporate the questions during that as much as possible, after which we will have a question and answer session in which you can use the raise your hand feature and interact with Apurva and me. And finally, we will have feedback and suggestions. As we begin this session, may I request you to keep your microphone muted at all times. And for your information, we will be recording this webinar. Some sections of the discussion may be used for sharing later. However, no part of the participant interaction will be disclosed publicly. So please feel free to bring up your questions and concerns, and we will be using this discussion for further programs that can be relevant to you. With that, over to you, Apurva.
Sure. Thanks, Bhavna. So I actually want to start with sharing a little bit about how I discovered freedom through this practice. I came upon yoga when I was 23 or maybe 24, and I was just going to a regular class when I lived in the US. And I was just going twice a week while I had a full-time job, and I was lucky. I had a wonderful boss who understood my need to take this time out, and I would go twice a week. I would shut my computer at 5 and rush down and do my class. And I think I managed a fairly decent schedule for 3-4 months. And I never really paid attention to what this was really doing to me. I was mostly going for weight loss, to be very honest, or just managing my figure or something like that. But in about 3 or 4 months, I remember a very clear day where I had gone for my yoga class. One of my best friends had gone for her dance class. We met after that, and she asked me, "How are you feeling?" Because I'd had a very bad day. I'd had a day which was full of demands and expectations and responsibility, and I was working, so client calls, and I was just really frustrated and tired and exhausted. And when she asked me, "How are you feeling?" it just struck me that it was as if nothing of that day existed in my system. Like someone had set that reset button, and I was ready to have a new day all over again at 9 p.m. because that's when my yoga class finished. And it just struck me that, wow, this is what I usually get from my yoga class. And I didn't even realize that. So as I pursued this practice, and at some point I wanted to learn more, I came back to India and I started learning, and I've been very, very lucky to find some wonderful teachers who actually taught me that the ultimate value of yoga, or the ultimate reason we do yoga, is to experience a sense of inner freedom. Okay? And freedom begins with the smallest things. It begins with just having better sleep, having a better digestion, from being able to sit quietly for 5 minutes without feeling there are 10 things I have to attend to right now, to a point where just last night I was listening to some very senior teachers in my tradition talk about that the purpose of yoga, or the goal of yoga, is to move towards something called muktatma. What muktatma means is nothing like terribly esoteric. It simply means a person who's able to live without feeling entangled in all that boggles us down. So the stress will be there, the situations will be there, the people will be there, the chaos will be there, COVID will be there. But in my inner space, if I can respond and engage without feeling that I'm so caught up, bound, then that is really the best that I can hope for. And that is the purpose of this practice. So for that for me is a sense of swatantra, the topic for today's session, that how do I use my breath, and how do I use simple tools of my breath, which is a resource that is available inside me all the time. And this I discovered, the journey is so interesting. When I came back to India, 3 years later, I had a complete nervous breakdown. Physically, mentally, emotionally, I was a wreck. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't work. I had so much pain in my body. And it was through working with my breath and working with my mind and how those two are linked that I was able to heal myself at many levels. And these are the levels I will share with you, to a life that I think has been better than ever. I'm 40. I think I'm much stronger, happier, more spontaneous than I was when I was younger. And I'm very grateful for that discovery. So what I'm here to offer to you is what I know, what I have practiced, what I'm absolutely confident about, and to share that this is a tool that if we start working with it, it actually can be very surprising where it can lead us. It can surprise us. So that's what we're really going to talk about.
Thank you for that, Apurva. I was just thinking it may be a good idea to get a sense of who's joined us today. And we have a couple of questions that we have for the audience. So if you can, we'll be running a short poll now. So could you just look at these questions that will appear on your screen and respond to them? I'm going to request my colleague to launch the poll so that you have the questions. Those of you who are on your phones, you may need to look at these poll questions and see if you can respond to them. It'll be useful to know who all is here today. Can you see the poll questions?
Yeah, I see them.
And those of you who have participated in the poll questions and would like to leave a message in the chat box in terms of any thoughts that are on your mind, then please use the chat box. Because while this is a section in which we have requested you to be mute, there is no reason why you cannot leave your thoughts. There can be other modes. All right, so we have about 22 people, 23, slowly climbing. I think sometimes it helps to know who are the others in the room. So can we have everybody respond to this question? What do you identify most with today? And please use the chat box to leave your thoughts or comments. The questions that you have already mentioned in the registration are something that we will pick up once Apurva has made her presentation. So Apurva, here you are. There's a significant population of people who are well-wishers of a caregiver and active caregivers themselves. I think those are the two big populations we have today.
Yeah, great. So I think what I'm going to share today and in our conversation with Bhavna and me is actually relevant to every single human being. So whether you're a well-wisher of a caregiver, you're a caregiver yourself, or any other choice that you would have made, we will be talking about how this is applicable to everybody, but also specifically about how it impacts caregivers and when we are taking care of people close to us or friends of ours who are caregivers and how it may impact. So we're going to also bring that conversation in. So to start with, I'd like to actually share a small model called the Panchakosha model. This is a model from the Indic wisdom, which actually invites us to look at a human being as a multi-dimensional human being, as a multi-dimensional being. So I'm just going to share my screen. Yeah. So this is called the Pancha Maya Kosha. And Maya Pancha is 5 and Maya is dimension. Sorry, Pancha Maya Kosha is 5 dimensions. So the first one is the Annamaya, which is the body, right? So if you look at the bottom of the screen, this is your physical world, the material world. It has an earth quality, and what that really means is you can touch it, you can feel it. And most of my life, I experience most of my life through the physical world. I experience most of my life through my body, right? And what does that really mean? I need food. It's called Annamaya because Anna means food. I need food and to sustain and nourish, to replenish this body. So how I eat, whether I eat on time, what is the quality of food? That's the first form of self-nourishment. Am I actually paying attention to my physical needs or what I need? How much is important for me? How much food do I consume? What kind of food do I consume? Secondly, it's rest. You know, how much, I mean, it's amazing how many people develop heart conditions or anxiety or elevated heart rates, for example, or hypertension because there's not enough rest. So the physical rest, am I taking enough time to listen to what my body is saying? And the body's always communicating with us, you know, and it's always telling us when it's fatigued. There is joint pain in the form of strain in the spine, in the form of overall sense of fatigue. So am I listening to my body and am I taking care of my body? Because when this dimension, which is this is the most obvious dimension to me, when it is not taken care of, it actually will impact a significant part of my life. So keeping a healthy, energized body where it is care of, where your muscles are strong, your bones are replenished, and the fatigue is not depleting you on a daily basis, that's an important aspect of our existence over here. So like I said, this is the most obvious, most outer layer that we actually experience. And then we move to the next layer, which is the pranamaya. Now you would have heard the word prana. In India, we all would have heard it. Prana means energy, life force energy. So this whole model actually is represented by a story where a child goes and asks his mother, "Ma, who am I?" So the mother tells the child, "Why don't you go find out?" And the first identification the child makes is his body. Then he says, "But you know, the body can be there. I mean, there are people who pass away. And so what is it that makes us alive? What is it that makes the body move? What is it that moves the lungs and moves the heart?" And so that is your life force energy, your prana. So all of us have prana that functions, that flows through us, which gives us life. And this prana is represented in our body. The most obvious representation is the breath. Okay, this is also, it is the prana that actually controls or manages the physiology of our life. Yeah. So how's my heart rate? How's my adrenaline? How's my thyroid? How's my hypertension? My diabetes? If my prana is not flowing well through my body, and prana flows through nadis or channels. They say there are many channels. When the channels are blocked or constricted, and I will share with you in a minute why they are constricted. One reason the channels are constricted is food that does not suit me or food that is not digested. So you can see how that links to the earlier kosha, the Annamaya. So when prana is not able to flow through the channels because they're constricted or they're blocked by undigested food, then that part of my body does not receive the life force energy that it requires to function well. Now that could be your kidneys, that could be your urinary bladder. It could be any part of your body. And taking care of this prana is very important. And that's one of the reasons why we use the breath in such a deep way, to enable the flow of prana in a smooth way. So the quality and quantity of prana flowing through the body actually reflects through our energy levels, reflects through how light or heavy we feel, reflects through the quality of the breath. Am I exhaling? Am I inhaling? And we're going to do some experiential work a little later today to get a sense of that. So then this child says, okay, I'm prana, but something influences my prana. What influences my prana? Why is it that some days I can just sit in one place and feel really tired, and on other days I could be very active and have done a lot of work, but I feel very alive and energized? So what influences my prana? So then he discovers the manomaya. The manomaya is the mind. This is that part of that part of me, which is my thoughts, my emotions, the lens through which I perceive the world. Yeah, the mind is not the brain. We must remember that. The mind is just the lens. We look at the world, we experience things around us, and that information comes in, and it is the lens. Like I'm wearing glasses right now. You see through the mind. If my mind is full of chaos, full of thoughts, full of disruptions, full of anxiety, then that will distort what I see and influence what I see. If my mind is clearer and cleaner, then how I perceive, what kind of actions I take, what kind of decisions I make are all going to be different. So taking care of my mind, he realizes that my thoughts and my emotions actually greatly influence. I'm so sorry, I think I went out of the presentation. Influence my mind. So then this child is quite curious, huh? More curiosity than all of us. So the child is thinking, so now what? Where do my thoughts come from? Right? Why is it that when someone is late, my father gets really angry, but it doesn't bother my mother? So where does the thought come from? So the next layer that belongs to, that's a part of us, is the Vijnanamaya. The Vijnanamaya is that some people relate it to the subconscious mind or the unconscious mind, which is below the surface. A lot of us would have seen the iceberg model. You can only see the top, but what's underneath we can't see. So what's underneath that influences my mind is my conditioning, which means the habits, what I have been taught, what values I've been taught, what patterns have I developed, my habits, my memories, my experiences, which would have led me to make certain decisions. Even as a child, a 5-year-old child that has an experience decides to cope with the world in a certain way. All those beliefs are like seeds that sit in the Vijnanamaya, and they can emerge, they can rise, they can influence the way I think. So if I have this belief that life should always be punctual, and I'm using punctuality as an example because I'm so not punctual, but that life should be everyone should be really punctual, my response to anybody who's even 2 minutes late will be influenced in a certain way. And if I believe that it's okay, time boundaries can be fluid, then when someone comes in a little late, my response may be different. Now, there can be pros and cons of both, right? There's no one right or one wrong. This is just to see a cause and effect. So this is the Vijnanamaya. And all of us have, for example, someone who lives life feeling that nothing should ever go wrong. Everything must happen on time. When I say time, I mean everything should happen as I have planned it. When we really come from those kind of places and life presents opposite situations to us, the mind gets really cluttered with a lot of angry thoughts or fearful thoughts or anxious thoughts. It could be anything, right? Each mind will function a different way, and that will influence the pranamaya. It will influence the sense of constriction. The nadis get very constricted with stress. That's the part I forgot to tell you when we were talking about manomaya. When I have stress, in yoga, we use a word called dukkha. Dukkha does not mean grief. Dukkha in yoga just means a sense of feeling tight, feeling constricted, like my shoulders are tight because I have so much responsibility, or my chest is tight because I'm so afraid. The day there was a COVID positive case in my community, right in the beginning of the lockdown, my whole body was like this. And no matter how much I told my mind, it's okay, there's nothing to worry about, it's in another building, it doesn't matter. right from my Vijnanamaya, the fear had come up. It influenced my mind. It influenced my breath. I could barely breathe. And I was feeling really tight and constricted in my body. So my whole being was under a state of stress. And then the child says, okay, all of this is true. I can see that. But what is also true that sometimes, even though there's a lot of chaos around me, I'm okay. I feel a sense of space. I feel a sense of lightness. I feel like even if things are bad, I can still smile and have fun. So what is that part of me? And that is Anandamaya, and it's at the center only because it's the subtlest. And in our world, it's the most difficult to stay in touch with. That's why I put it in the center. This is our sense of joy, our ease, sense of lightness, equanimity. Equanimity is similar to what I was sharing with you in the beginning of the session, the muktatma, you know. I'm not away from the world. I'm not away from the situations in my world. What is happening is I have a sense of ease inside me in dealing with things. So it's the opposite of the constriction. It's opposite of dukkha. It's called sukha. So that's the space of the Anandamaya. So these 5 dimensions, each one of us has our own version of them. We are each, this is a human model which influences my well-being, which influences how much fatigued. If my manomaya is fully active, constantly busy with thoughts, and depends on what kind of thoughts, right? And especially when we are looking after other people, there's a lot of management, there's a lot of dependencies on frustrations, because especially in this COVID times, I can't even imagine how difficult some things might be. The mind is so full. Yeah, Bhavna, did you want to say something?
I'm saying that it's quite possible that people who are caregivers and people who are well-wishers of caregivers are very often anticipating a whole lot of things, right? You're planning for a plan B, and you're planning for a contingency, and you're planning for what ifs. And they are likely to run havoc with your both thoughts as well as emotions. So I
Absolutely.
personally, for example, have gone through this, that when you hear of a difficult news, then your mind is like racing very fast because you just wish to be in control. And in order to be in control, what's the best way to be in control? To be able to, like I've thought through, if this is not, if this will fail, then I'll do plan B, plan C, and this means this and that means that. And there's a whole whirlwind going on, especially when there is long-term illness or a difficult incurable illness and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's a distinct reality of caregivers.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Bhavna. And the more well-being is defined or feeling light or easy or comfortable or a sense of control from inside, and the freedom that we are talking about, the inner freedom, it works when all of these dimensions seem to have some kind of a sense of flow and balance. But for daily management, so let me bring it a little more into narrow focus. For managing fatigue and anxiety, which is what we are also talking about here, we mostly work with the first 3 layers, the Annamaya, Pranamaya, and the Manomaya, the body, the breath, and the mind.
Mm.
The Vijnanamaya is a longer term process. As you work with the first 3, you start automatically working with the Vijnanamaya, and as the mind quietens down, you see the mind is the layer that is the heaviest, the densest, and the most obstructive. When the mind settles down, it is only then when the inner layers can actually emerge, which is including the Anandamaya.
Mm.
It's very difficult to be in touch with a sense of sukha or joy or ease or equanimity. And equanimity is so required, especially when you're a caregiver. You're seeing somebody you love or somebody you live with go through suffering, go through pain. There are times when we can't do anything about that, right? At that point, I need that part of me, the equanimity, to be alive, or I could crumble under the pain that I will go through, right? So So the most important part is to take care of my body, take care of my prana, the physiology, which is using the breath, and most importantly, stabilizing and clearing the mind. If you imagine the mind to be a pendulum which swings all over, and every time there's a news or there's a negative thought or there's something that disturbs me, actually, we don't like to use the word positive and negative, just something that disturbs me. Yeah. The pendulum starts swinging all over the place. What we are proposing is using the breath. If I can bring my pendulum to a more of a state of rest, that actually opens the space for me to experience Anandamaya and a sense of flow and freedom from inside. So I'll take a pause here, Bhavna. Any reflections, anything that you want to add specifically from the caregiver or the friends of the caregiver perspective?
Yeah, one of the very thanks for asking that, because I think one of the very interesting things that I have encountered in my hundreds of conversations with caregivers is that there is a sense of responsibility that caregivers carry. There is certainly a sense of duty, and there is a sense of responsibility that I must do all that which is within my ability, all that is possible, and I should have left no stone unturned in order to care and to protect, or to take, just for my loved one. Now, if that sense of responsibility is there, there also tends to be a feeling that I come after
Hmm.
the person who has this obvious suffering.
Yeah.
And I think that it is so hard when you are in that role to be able to say that I have to look after myself, my sense of well-being, in order to be able to provide the best environment, because there is perhaps some guilt, there is anxiety that might come in if you give yourself priority. Or
Yeah.
you might seem like giving yourself priority. Actually, you're not really giving yourself priority.
Yeah, I think that's a very valuable reflection. And how I see it is, um, this is one of our patterns.
Yeah.
This is coming from an inner space, a Vijnanamaya space. And for some reason, this pattern is there. It's valid. You see, we don't say anything is good or bad. We just say, can I learn to observe what is? So I have this pattern. Okay. Maybe I've learned this pattern because I saw someone else in my family doing it this way.
Yeah.
Maybe I have this pattern because I anyway usually put others first. Or maybe I developed this pattern because I saw it as the need of the hour at a particular time. So there is some reason why this pattern exists. Now what?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think that caregivers from mythology and social conditioning
Yeah.
come with a certain expectation. So, they are the examples of whether it is the Shravan Kumar, or it is the Savitri, or it is the Ram, there where there is that putting others before yourself, self-sacrifice, almost like you ought to have martyred yourself.
Yeah.
And it becomes complex when, women are caregivers. And 60 to 80% of the caregivers are women, because we also have stereotypes that women are better nurturers and better caregivers and so on. And there is this intense conditioning that there is just that way of being a good caregiver,
Yeah.
and which
Absolutely.
clearly comes from the conditioning that you've mentioned in the Vijnanamaya.
Yes, and this is all stored there and subtle. And when we are facing a certain situation, it comes up, and what ends up happening is we look at it as this is the only way to be. And actually, no, I mean, you brought it up so beautifully. That is the real exploration of freedom. When I can step back and look at the pattern that is emerging and be able to see the root of it. Where did it come from? Did it come from social conditioning? Does it come from maybe my own ignorance that this is how it has to be? We call it avidya in the Yoga Sutra. Whatever is the seed, where it comes from, if I can see it, okay, yoga teaches us if I can see it, that's all. Then I will experience things in a different way. Something will shift in just seeing it. I had a coaching session with about 10 people today, Bhavna, and what they shared after a program they had gone through was they're just starting to see their patterns, and somehow the stress is less.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about. So if I come back to how the breath can help us, the breath is the bridge that actually helps us reach the mind to slow that pendulum down or to clean that lens. Right? When my lens is as clean as possible, I can see better. I can see better myself and where am I acting from, what seeds in me are emerging, what patterns in me are emerging. I can also see others more clearly. And when you talked about, choosing myself over others, one of the foundations of Indic wisdom that we work with is there is no choice between the self and the other. It is always the self and the other. There is no sustainability in any way if I choose myself over others or I choose others over myself. So how do I find that ground where I give equal importance to both, even though it may seem obvious that the other person needs more care?
Yeah. And this is the crux, and it is such a huge challenge. Whether now, so for example, caregivers in my mind is a very wide definition, though of course we have, created a little focus to say family caregivers of those who are looking after the terminally ill, because we just want to say, okay, this is our core population that we want to support because they are the most disadvantaged. However, each one of us is a caregiver. As friends, we are caregivers. As partners, we are caregivers. As parents, we are certainly caregivers.
Absolutely.
Though the dimensions and the challenges will be slightly different. And also, for example, sometimes we could be caregivers in the professional roles that we play. Coaches, teachers, healthcare practitioners are all caregivers, and there is a certain demand from them. And that demand cannot be endlessly furnished unless there is some kind of a replenishment. So I'd like you to speak to that too.
Yeah. So the demand and the replenishment have to happen simultaneously. It is an ongoing cycle. And if I look at when I do not invest in replenishing myself, and this is not saying that I should put myself first before others, I don't believe in all that. I'm inviting us to say, can I really listen to my body? Can I really listen and observe my breath? When I'm tired and fatigued and overwhelmed, I'm a caregiver. I am a yoga therapist. I work with people who have health issues. I'm sometimes working from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. In fact, very often, especially in this pandemic, that's what's happening. But if I listen to my breath very clearly tells me you've had enough. Okay, this is the time to step back and rest. And there's a time when I'll cancel a class, for example, to take the time out for myself. So can I listen, pay attention, and replenish myself? Not just because I have to serve the other. And that is also valid. Okay? When I'm a caregiver, and that's what I feel the purpose of my life is, please, let's grace that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's not fight that at all. However, to be the best version of myself in whatever role I'm playing, whether I'm taking care of someone at home, whether I'm a parent, or I'm running a big organization, I need to look at these 5 dimensions and start getting a sense of what's happening in all 5 of them. Is my body so tired all the time? How does that affect me? Do I ever connect with the Anandamaya space? Am I constantly feeling a sense of impatience and racing in my mind? And how is that influencing me? I can sit back and say I'm a victim and I don't have any choice and this is how life is and ये तो करना ही पड़ता है, ऐसे ही है जिंदगी. We can say all those things to us. But Swatantram for me is about saying I have these resources within me. This breath is here. Till our teacher's teacher, Sri Krishnamacharya used to say, if you can breathe, you can do yoga. There is something for you. So as long as I'm alive, this breath is my resource. So how can I use it to bring more balance, more clarity and ease in all the dimensions? If I don't take care of my body, my food, my fatigue, it is going to create a dullness in the rest of the space. And if I don't connect to my sense of joy, sometimes we give people practices. What do you enjoy doing? So someone says, I like to listen to music. So a practice I give them is go for a walk, listen to your favorite song every day for 5 minutes. That's a practice. So if I don't consciously connect to the Anandamaya space, then I will end up feeling like there's no joy in life. And that will deplete me. That will add to the fatigue. So it works both ways. From the outside, it comes to the inside. From the inside, it goes to the outside. But the simplest tool that can help tie all these together is some simple breathing practices. So replenishing myself using my breath has been a cornerstone of my life for the last 10 years. It's been a part of my healing. I told you I had a nervous breakdown at that time. And through all the different ups and downs of my life. Because the ups and downs haven't gone away, Bhavna. I've been doing yoga for 15 years and I thought the ups and downs will go away. But they have not. But my response and how up and down I feel with them has totally changed. So I was wondering if you think we can take a pause and maybe try a practice.
Absolutely. And I was just wondering, it'll be a good idea if we can get a sense of what kind of an audience we have. So maybe we can just run a brief poll that tells us what the kind of exposure people have to yoga. So I'm going to launch a poll. I'll request all the participants to respond to the 3 questions that you have on your screens. I hope that you can see them. This will help Apurva get a sense of who's in the audience and what kind of an experience she can help us have. What I actually like about your practice, Apurva, is that it is so customized. And it does take into account the fact that, that people are different and they come at different points in time.
Absolutely.
And also the principle of ahimsa. And I'd love for you to speak to that because it has really impacted me personally.
We'll do that for sure. Should we take the next step?
Yeah. So I'm just, I think about 32 people have responded to the poll. So we have an equal number of people with equal divide between yes, no, and sometimes yoga practicing. Fairly similar, no meditation.
So Bhavna, I'd like to just share with the group what I mean by yoga. It just struck me.
Okay? Yeah, I think we can start with that.
Yeah. Today in the world, yoga has become equivalent to asana, which is the physical postures.
Yeah.
In fact, if you look on a lot of websites abroad, it comes under sport.
Wow, really?
Yeah, yeah. Like if you go to Paragon or you want to buy some clothes, it'll come under sporting equipment.
Wow.
And it's not. Okay?
Certainly not.
Yeah. So what I mean by yoga is And there are many ways to define it. But the fundamental practice of yoga is made of 8 angas, Ashtanga, Yama and Niyama, which are, Yama is social attitudes, which includes ahimsa. So be with the world, can I move towards? Now these are directions, okay? They are not rules. They should not be treated like rules that I have to practice. This is a guiding light, okay? So practice ahimsa, non-violence, practice satya, which is speaking my truth, asteya, taking only, like not stealing from anyone else. That's what asteya means. Aparigraha, and these are found all over the internet, but the meanings can be whatever. I don't take guarantee for that. Aparigraha is not hoarding. It's only taking what I need.
Yeah.
Yeah. Niyama is saucha. So now, these are all social attitudes, yama, how I engage with the world. And why should we do this? It's very simple. If I can work in this direction, my mind will be at peace. I will be more connected in Anandamaya, and I will be more stable inside me. That's the only reason. Not because you have to save the world or do good for anybody else. At the end of the day, it talks about what is the outcome for me, right? Like for example, in ahimsa, because you asked for it, it says, those who are established in ahimsa, in non-violence, all violence around them just dissolves. And I've truly, as I move in that direction through my practice in very small ways, I can see that conflict dissolves. People don't want to have conflicting discussions with you as much anymore. When I'm not feeling ahimsa, then of course there's lots of conflict, right? Then the next is niyama, which is personal attitudes, disciplines, saucha, cleanliness. So cleanliness in my food, so eating holistic, nutritious food, not processed food. Practices which keep my body, breath, and mind clean, those nadis clean. Santosha, practicing contentment. Gratitude could be one practice that's linked. And then tapaha, swadhyaya, ishvara pranidhana. Tapaha is practices like simple commitments that I make to myself. Swadhyaya is practicing self-awareness. Ishvara pranidhana is actually in some ways just, it's too big a word to go to right now, but I'll just say it. It's a form of surrender. Swadhyaya is also about reading books that help me know myself. So that's how you practice self-awareness. Now, these two are the most complex part of this Ashtanga, and most people don't know about it, which is fine. We'll put it aside. The next step is asana. So remember, can you all hear me? My internet's a bit.
Yeah.
Can you all hear me?
The last sentence, please. Yeah.
Yeah. Could you hear me? My internet was a little bit low.
Yes. So could you repeat the last sentence, Apurva?
I was saying that yama and niyama, we keep them aside. The next step is asana, which is take care of my body.
Right.
So asana is only about taking care of the body so that I can be healthy.
Right.
That's it. Then you leave asana behind and you go to pranayama, which is actually working with your breath.
Right.
Right? Now, what's happened is most of us in the world are stuck with asana. And we continue to explore the body to have a very perfect kind of body. We recently did some videos for patients with multiple sclerosis. And while people with multiple sclerosis do not experience any kind of perfect body, they've experienced actually a lot of difficulty in their body. There's a yoga practice for them too that can help them. There's an asana practice for them that can help them take care of their body.
Right.
Yeah. Then we move to the breath.
Sorry. No, what I just take away from that is that very often we can be tempted and prompted to look at our bodies with a sense of violence, with a sense of wanting to chipping and chopping and editing and shaping, when there is a certain, like the sentiment that you have towards it, like, whether you have a sentiment of hatred or disgust or dislike for your body, that's an
expectation of endlessness from your body.
Right. And that's an act of violence, actually.
It is. And especially when I'm a caregiver, Bhavna, I probably expect a lot from my own body.
Right. I should never be tired, as if I can last 24/7 and so on. Yeah.
Yeah. So yoga actually is much more than asana. And when I say practicing yoga, I'm talking about bringing a sense of alignment in your body, breath, and mind, so
Right.
that your ability to be healthy, alert, at peace, and clarity, being able to see so that your mind is clear, that is the yoga. So very often people think of that as meditation,
Right.
and they separate yoga and meditation.
Right.
So why I'm sharing this is any
Okay, technical glitch.
visualization practice, my mind settle down and feel clearer. If it's not doing that, yeah, Bhavna.
Sorry, the connectivity went out for a little bit.
Oh,
If you could just repeat your sentence.
I'm saying any practice that I do, if it's not helping my mind, it is not serving the potential that yoga has to offer.
Right. Right.
Okay. So when I say doing a practice, we are actually saying, if you go back to the 5 dimensions I shared with you, it's about actively taking care of the first 3 dimensions.
Right.
Nourishing your first 3 dimensions through your habits and through your practices.
So, you know, this background and this context has been so, I mean, I may have heard it before, and yet I really like how you present it. It's very involving and very clarifying. I'd like to remind us of the time and take stock and maybe do a small practice.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to share with you a very simple practice that you can do every day, morning or evening. And let's come back after the practice and then share your experience.
Right. Can I just request all those who are on the call to briefly turn on your videos, and those of you, there are some names that are not your, you know, your names like Acer, etc. Can I just request you to put your names on so that we know who's there? All right, Apurva, all yours.
Okay, so let's sit comfortably. And I really mean that. You don't have to sit on the floor. You don't have to sit cross-legged. Just sit in a comfortable way. Ahimsa, as Bhavna brought in this idea.
Just interrupt.
Yes.
Hey, Izer is my computer, laptop.
Yes.
I was unable to get the audio. So I was struggling with it and just joined. Okay?
Understood, understood. Joseph, good to see you. All right.
All right. So the first principle of doing any practice that's going to help you is to be non-violent towards ourselves. So what does that mean? Don't force myself to sit in a difficult position. Don't force myself to be uncomfortable. Let go of everything. This is the conditioning. Let go of everything you've heard about how it should be done. Listen to your body. Sit on a chair. If sitting is difficult for you, lie down. Let's start from there. Okay? Lie down on a bed. If you're comfortable, sit cross-legged. You choose. So start with that and close your eyes. If in the beginning you need to take some back rest, please do that. Can I ask Nabia to mute all those who are not speaking, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. So close your eyes. And today, let us begin.
Deepti, can I just request mute your end, please? Deepti, could you please mute your end? Thank you.
Today, I would like to invite you to start exploring a new relationship with your breath. So start by observing your breath. In the center of your chest. Even if you have done meditation before, don't worry about that. Just start with explore with a fresh perspective. Maybe bring a new curious mind to see if there's something else you can discover today. And let us begin as you watch your breath with this intention, this sankalpa, that I would now like to take the support of my breath to move towards a greater sense of freedom. And we'll start by using a little bit of sound. Our goal here is to help the breath become longer and softer. The longer the breath, the quieter the mind. Okay? So place one hand on your lower abdomen. Keep your spine straight. Preferably don't lean forward like this. Like just sit up. Close your eyes. Just breathe in with me. Breathe into the chest. And bring your attention to your hand on your lower abdomen and make a humming sound. Hum. At the end of the hum, I want you to relax. Just be with that silence for 2 seconds. And then let's inhale again together. Hum. Let the humming be as per your need, your requirement, as long as your breath is. Don't force. That's also an act of ahimsa. It can be as short or as long. Let's take the next breath. Inhale. Breathe into your chest. Hum. Continue another 4 to 5 times on your own. Hum. Continue. At the end of each hum, just give yourself a few seconds to be with the silence. Keep your chin in a neutral place. If the chin is going up, just bring it down to a neutral place. Just 2 more times. And when you're done, just watch your breath again. Look at the quality of your breath. Has it changed? And look at your quality of your mind. How are you feeling? Now let's take the next step. We will continue to work with the exhalation without sound. You can hum mentally. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're just going to inhale, breathe in. Same thing, your hand is on your lower abdomen. You slowly exhale. Consciously just breathe out with your attention on your lower abdomen. Maybe your lower abdomen will start to go in a little bit. You can do the humming in your mind silently. And when you finish the exhale, just relax. Can we do this 4 to 5 times? So breathe in, inhale, pause, and then consciously start to exhale, slowly exhaling. When you're done, just relax for a few minutes. Let the exhale be as long or short as it is for you. Can you do this 4 more times? Listen to the sound of the hum in your mind and watch the abdomen going down and in. And when you're done, just relax, take a break. Keep your eyes closed. Watch your breath. See how you're feeling. And slowly open your eyes. Maybe we can use the chat window to just share how you're feeling right now and what you observed about the breath, and then we'll take one more step. Bhavna, is that okay? Just use the chat where tension arising at the center of the forehead, that will go away in time. That's fine. Like to hear from others also how you're feeling. Okay. So hopefully you've experienced your breath becoming a little longer. And what's important is to start any breathing practice with lengthening the exhale. Why the exhale? Two reasons. The exhale actually helps to empty the lungs and the mind. There's a relationship between the breath and the mind. And when we exhale completely, it also helps the mind to empty out and quieten down. That's what you experience after you've done it a few times, not just in one time. Because also the exhale helps to calm the nervous system down. It calms down, it brings in the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the nervous system which helps us feel rest and restored. So whenever we start breathing, and as caregivers especially, we are full mentally, emotionally, we're thinking, we're holding back a lot, so we're accumulating and not expressing. The exhale helps us clear that residue, and it is so important to do that every day. Yes, as you and someone shared here, you could hear your heartbeats. Absolutely. As the mind quietens down, you are able to listen to your body a little better. You are able to acknowledge the things, the pains, the aches, so you know then what to take care of. You have more information. So we always begin with the exhale, and the goal is to make the exhale longer and subtler. And we place the hand on the lower abdomen because that is the region of elimination for the body. All the intestines are there, the urinary bladder is there, the uterus is there. We call it the apana region in the body. The lower abdomen is where all the organs of elimination are. So when you exhale long, with a focus on the lower abdomen, you're also engaging the organs in that part of the body, helping them improve their function. So you are also detoxifying at the pranamaya level. You remember the second circle. Just by doing a good exhale, you can release fatigue from your body, relax the nervous system, help the body eliminate better, not only through good breath. You see, when we breathe out well, the lungs, all the residual air in the lungs also releases. So the next inhale that you take becomes better. But it also helps to detoxify the body through the elimination organs that are below the navel, right? Typically, that's the area, we call it the apana region. So we start with emptying, because if you have a cup full of water, you have to empty that water which is full of residue before you can take in fresh, you can pour something fresh into it. So we exhale well. Now we'll do one more step where we will continue to exhale well. Now exhale is more important than your inhale. Exhale can never be shorter than your inhale. It can be the same, it can be a little longer, but at the end of the exhale, as you practice, the exhale has the capacity to slowly lower your heart rate. So if I inhale more than I exhale, inhales actually increase the heart rate just by a little bit. Okay, if you play with it with feeling your pulse, typically you'll feel it. if I keep inhaling more than my exhale, I'm constantly raising my heart rate. You have to be it's very important that exhale should not be shorter than your inhale. So therefore, what is the inhale for? After we have exhaled a little bit, the inhale is for opening, energizing, bringing in fresh oxygen, fresh prana. And this part of the body, okay? This part of the body is considered to be the seat of our energy. This is based on yoga anatomy. This is not physical anatomy. If you cut open my body, you're not going to see a seat of energy over there. But yogic science says, this is the seat of my energy. So when I inhale well into this part and let my chest expand, it actually opens the flow of prana into all the nadis. And this is something we talked about. When there is flow of prana, fatigue is less. And when I inhale and exhale well, slowing my breath down, both slowing my inhale and exhale down, the mind becomes quieter. So what the texts say, the slower and softer the breath, the quieter the mind. And that is why just the breathing itself is a practice of meditation. We call it pranayama, but it should be meditation. They're not just random breathing exercises. Now, some of you, I'm sure, are doing pranayama, other techniques like Anulom Vilom. Please do them. But remember, these principles that I'm sharing with you apply to that technique also. The breath has to be soft, subtle, conscious. Don't do them like an automatic physical exercise. Where is your mind? Consciously breathing and making sure your exhale is not shorter than your inhale. So don't do it mechanically. Pay attention to it and start to slow it down. So let's try it one more time. So everybody sit comfortably, close your eyes. We'll work with both the exhale and inhale now.
And just as you do that, there are a couple of inputs. For example, while at one level calmer, so calm that I could feel sleepy, but also breathless. So.
Thanks for that. Yeah. So we tend to feel breathless when we're doing these practices if we push the breath too much. So can I really listen to just the edge? Like, where is it comfortable? We have to move towards a more comfortable breath. So if I'm feeling breathless, stop, relax, watch what you're doing. Are you pushing? Like, I was having a conversation with someone who has high blood pressure and it's very high right now. So I told her, don't do too much breathing. Just rest for some time. If I don't do it, how will I learn? How will I grow? How will it get better? The body, the breath is the most sensitive tool. When I get a yoga therapy student, it is their breath that tells me much more than what the student tells me. So can all of us here start listening to the breath? Yeah, Bhavna.
So I wanted to tell you, Apurva, that, like sometimes you kind of come to a practice and you feel that, oh, this is the solution for me. So, like now over next 10 sessions, I must fix myself.
Yeah.
So, and if I have that goal for myself, and okay, fine. I mean, I don't really have too much time, and this is like very typical of caregivers. So I give myself 10 sessions, chop, let me now fix myself in 10 sessions. So, and it might then translate into saying, now let me get it right the first session.
Yeah.
And after my first session, I should be able to do like 1 hour of practice. So I want you to speak to that, please.
Yeah.
In terms of saying that you could start small.
I think, Bhavna, you're speaking from your own experience, aren't you?
Correct, I am.
Yes. So, yes, please start small. Start with 12 breaths.
Yeah.
But each of those breaths should be comfortable. That's why I'm asking you to just take breaks. Teach yourself with kindness. Teach your body how to breathe, how to listen to your breath. Take one step at a time. 12 breaths in the morning, 12 breaths in the evening. Start with that. Then, when you're very comfortable, make it 16 breaths. Then you're very comfortable, make it 20 breaths. And this idea of breathing for half an hour or 1 hour, please let it go. Because it's very difficult to sit and breathe for 1 hour. If you're really that keen to grow this practice, please find a good therapist and learn all the steps required to be able to do a 1 hour practice. What we are offering here is a small capsule that each one of us can do something and begin and experience some benefit, right? So I hope that answers your question, Bhavna.
Yeah, I think the connection there is that physiological well-being is absolutely critical. And therefore, dealing with your body with a certain quality of love and respect and non-violence and attention. And that's the reason that we are having this session. That how is it that one can have such a relationship with one's body?
Yeah, and that relationship comes with time, with being present and showing up for my body every day, showing up for the physiological well-being every day. And when I started the session, I talked about it, right? Swatantram will emerge when my heart rate is a little easier, when my breath flows more freely, when my muscles are not as tight and wound up, right? When my mind, instead of going all over the place like this, is slower. It may not have stopped, that's fine. But if it's slower, therefore, the experience of freedom will emerge. And that actually inspires me to come back to my practice every day. And someone shared with me very beautifully today that this is a continuous cycle, that just because I experience something today, when I wake up tomorrow, I may need to bring conscious energy to this effort, do some practice the next day. Each day is a new day. So start small and let each day build on what you're doing. So close your eyes, bring your attention to your breath, chin in a neutral place, place one hand on your lower abdomen, and this time place the other hand in the center of your chest, because we're going to pay attention to the exhale also. First, always start with just watching your breath. Just like, we open a tap and let the water run for some time. That's the way you just need to let your breath run, and you need to just step back and watch. Actually, that is meditation. Meditation is to be able to step back and just watch, do nothing, just watch. So start with a little meditative practice towards your breath. Close your eyes, watch your breath for about a minute. And then let's start with bringing attention to the exhalation. You can use humming. The humming helps to lengthen the breath, or you can just slowly, consciously exhale. So just breathe in, inhale. Don't pay too much attention to the inhale in the beginning. First, empty and bring your attention to your lower abdomen and exhale. Slowly exhale. When you're done with that breath, relax. And take the next inhale consciously. Do this 6 times. 6 times. Each breath is a source of life force energy. Each breath deserves its respect and full attention. As you do the exhale, start to relax. Keep your eyes closed, don't open your eyes. This is also a practice, learning to sit with my eyes closed for 5 minutes and not falling asleep. And when you feel ready, start to inhale gently, gently, just a little more. Just deepen your inhale, just a little bit. So basically in the center of your chest, just feel a slight expansion and breathe in. And then consciously start to exhale. So now you're doing the whole cycle, the breathing in and the breathing out. Just for another 5 or 6 breaths, be with your own breath, your life force energy. All those 5 dimensions are being served by the breath. And slowly relax, bring your hands down, keep your eyes closed. Once again, bring your attention back to the center of your chest. And again, this is the way to meditate. You hold your attention after having quietened your mind a little bit in the center of your chest. You hold it in one place and you focus on your breath, meaning just watch your breath very gently. Again, ahimsa, with love and kindness, watch your breath. This breath that has been with us since the day we arrived here. Let's take a moment to express gratitude to all the 5 dimensions of our being, the Annamaya, the body, the Pranamaya, the physiology, the breath, the energy, the Manomaya, the mind, the thoughts, the emotions, the Vijnanamaya. While there are many limiting beliefs, there are also many empowering beliefs. And the Anandamaya, a source of joy, which is always there. Am I connecting with it? And slowly relax. Take your time. When you're ready, open your eyes. How are you feeling?
I can speak for myself. I'm just
Yeah.
pleased.
Feeling?
Feeling pleased.
Wonderful.
Feeling assured.
Yeah. Assured because we just feel assured.
So for everything that's going on for me, I think I'm assured that, we'll get through this kind of a feeling. So feeling assured. I think anxiety also comes from this unpredictability and saying that, what will happen, what will happen. So for me, lesser anxiety would mean some kind of an assuredness, some kind of a belief that, I will get through this.
Yeah.
This shall pass and we'll be fine. Whatever happens, it will be okay.
One of the things I forgot to mention, Bhavna, is that Vijnanamaya layer, which I said the conditioning and all, that's also the space of your Shraddha, your inner conviction. So it is when the mind quietens down, the Shraddha from inside, which is there, has the space to come up. So when you shared what you shared, that's what I think is happening.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. So I know we're really out of time, but would you like to open the space for questions? I'm okay to stay back a little bit. If some people want to stay back, that's also fine with me. And leave it to you to decide.
Yeah, so I'm going to open the space for questions. You may use the raise your hand feature, and I will look out for those who may have raised their hands. You can also leave the question in the chat box, and as people think that and come up with the questions that they might have, Apurva, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions that came in at the time of the registration. One was that will it be effective in reducing my anxiety? So I am hoping that the person who had this question would have had some experience of this. Is there any informative material on healthcare professionals on this? So I don't really know what that question is. If the person who asked this question would like to illustrate what their question is, could you please mention that in the chat box, and we will pick it up. I was a primary caregiver to my father. I lost him on 24th June, so this is really recent. I'm very sorry to hear this. I continue to feel anxious even after a week. Well, I think, it's okay at one level. For whatever I know, it's just a week, and it's such a big, it could potentially be such a big trauma and a big event in your life. But be that as it may, I think that, our environment just expects you to move on so fast. I mean, please don't. How can this help an ALS patient? Apurva, ALS is a condition, a neurological condition that impacts the central nervous system.
Yeah.
The autoimmune system, sorry. And, your voluntary functions deteriorate over a period of time. So, as always, the caregiver, instead of thinking for themselves, is thinking about the patient. I understand that. So, would you speak to something about doing this together with the patient?
Yes, it's very beautiful to practice together, but when for the patient, it is better to seek first the help of a yoga therapist who can look at the condition, look at the symptoms. We have different ways of working with each condition, very specific ways. Like for blood pressure and heart conditions, we would work a certain way. Migraines, we would work a certain way. These are the simpler ones I'm talking about.
Right.
And then you can practice together. Maybe the same teacher can give the caregiver also a slightly more elaborate practice.
Right.
So you may not do the same things, but because yoga has to be tailored for you and your needs, it cannot be one thing fits all. So I would not try this with your patient because I cannot recommend that, because I don't know what the condition is and I don't know what the state of their breath is. We may have to look at that and see how to help them take the first steps.
I think the important piece is to first look after yourself, because you're the best in charge for yourself. So I think it's best to do that rather than just think about the patient all the time. I have a question here which says that, it's hard to sleep. I try to go to bed, but I'm not able to sleep for a very long time.
Yeah.
I tire myself out by watching TV or something. I even end up having pills. So I get up in the morning very groggy. So what would your suggestions be?
So this simple, when you want to sleep at night and you're not able to sleep, it's simply a function of the mind being too active. So how do we make the mind quieter?
Right.
So long exhales. So use the humming sound. You can lie down in your bed and do it. Use slowly exhale as much as your body can do. Don't force your breath at all. And you may need to do that for 10-15 minutes as your mind slows down. And then maybe you'll fall asleep. And initially, you may not see such a fast result. See, I don't know how, it also depends on how long have you had this problem, right? How deep is the pattern?
Right.
So you start this, and I have helped many, many people with insomnia. So I know that this is the direction of the practice. So you start trying it, and then in some time, sometimes it works right away, but sometimes it takes a little more time. you'll start finding that it's less difficult for you to fall asleep. Quietening the mind, relaxing the mind, clearing the mind, and quietening the nervous system. These are really the directions that we need to go with.
Right. There are lots of compliments for you, Apurva, and I'm not surprised.
Thank you.
So I'm just looking for questions. Dr. Jagruti, all your comments are coming to me individually. They're not going in the to everyone, but I am going to read them out. So take care of yourself like how you're taking care of others. Replenishing yourself is very important. Absolutely. That's a nice takeaway according to her. So there's another question, which is that because I'm emotionally stressed, I end up binging or eating a lot. Yeah. So I know this is right up your alley. So I'm putting on weight and that's depressing me even more.
Yeah.
So will you please speak to that? And then there is somebody who's raised her hand.
All roads lead to the breath. And I like to say that hungry and angry, there's not a very big difference between the two.
Yeah, like someone I know calls himself hangry. I'm feeling hangry right now.
Yeah. You know, the key there is to not try and control your food as much, but to actually work with your state of mind, your emotional self. See, the breath is one way. I will actually, Bhavna, share a 10-minute recording that you can pass on to everyone and they can follow that.
Right.
Okay? That's a resource that everyone can use.
Yeah.
Also, can we start looking at what helps me relax? So one of the things I discovered 2 years ago for myself was going for a walk 30 to 40 minutes really helps me. And even if I go for 20 minutes, just being out.
Yeah.
And even in this COVID time, because I'm lucky enough to live in a community where I can go down and walk, I make it a point that 4 to 5 times a week I get out and I don't walk very fast. I don't exercise. I hate it. I stroll because that's what helps me calm down. So can you figure out what helps you calm down? And let me also just share, binge watching television does not help you calm down. It adds to your problems.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it leads to more thoughts. And if it's an engaging story, so for example, I did a couple of, you want to watch the next and you were so involved in that story. You want to know what happened next. So it's just messing with your mind. And we can go on. I'd like to ask Shailaja to speak, please.
Yes.
Hi, Apurva. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi. Thank you so much for this enlightening session. I had a few questions. You talked about yoga, so I'm really confused. There are so many different kinds of yoga, and now the market is blooming. It's all commercial. How to go by it? I am really keen on learning yoga, and I did 2-3 years back for just few months, but then I shifted cities, so I couldn't pursue it any longer. And now when I'm back, I'm in Jaipur. Yes, and now when I'm back, I see it's also commercialized that I really don't know which way to pick.
Okay. So I can just share. I come from the tradition of Sri Krishnamacharya. You can reach out to me or to Yoga Vahini. We follow this tradition. We have trained many teachers, so we can always connect you with someone. The second piece is always look for yoga that, like I shared, helps or addresses 2 aspects. Is it in alignment with ahimsa, the practice? Okay. And is it working with the body, breath, and the mind? If you have a yoga teacher who says, oh, we are going to strengthen the core, and that's what we are primarily going to work with, I would question that. And then look at what resonates with you. But if you're looking at body, breath, and mind, like a triangle, all 3 have to be addressed. And is the teacher teaching you a way to treat yourself kindly with non-violence? Those are fundamental things you can look for.
All right. And I did try to look up for you in LinkedIn, but I could not. So if you could just pitch me in.
In breath. Look for me, Apurva Jalan. You should find me. I'm there on LinkedIn.
Yes, you are there on LinkedIn, but I was not able to connect to you or to message. So
Okay. Bhavna, what should we do? You can go to my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/inbreath.
I don't have a Facebook account.
Oh,
Yeah, we will send you details. So all the people who attend the
Alright.
session, we send them information. So we will send you some kind of contacts, etc., through which you can reach.
All right. Thank you so much, Apurva and Bhavna. Thank
thanks,
you.
Shilja.
We're glad to have you here. And thanks for asking questions. I think it takes a little effort to put yourself out there and ask a question. So well done for that. The only thing I'd add is I think it's okay to go through a couple of teachers and figure out the one who resonates with you.
Yeah.
It's fine to, try out a few and then make a decision. I think that's important. Anyone else? I know we have bust a time boundary, but I'm not surprised, Apurva, at all.
Remember, I said punctuality is not my thing.
And I also see that there is no rush. Nobody wants to leave,
Yeah.
it seems. So Alicia has raised her hand. Yes, Alicia.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Very faint, but yeah, go ahead.
Now can you hear me?
Better.
Okay. Are there any good yoga practices for the spine? I mean, there was someone who recommended me something called Hatha. I can't pronounce it properly.
Hatha yoga.
Hatha yoga. Is that good for the spine?
I hope it's not Hatha yoga.
No, I couldn't get the name, but it starts with an H. I know it sounds similar like that. Hatha, yeah, Hatha, something like Hatha yoga, I think it is.
Hatha yoga.
Huh.
So technically, all yoga is Hatha yoga.
Why is there a huge echo?
Yeah, actually, Alicia, you may need to mute yourself.
Okay.
Mute your mic, not yourself. So there are a lot of people who teach Hatha yoga, which is basically typically, I don't know about every teacher. See, every teacher is different. Will be more asana focused. In fact, all yoga practice is centered around the spine. Now, if you have back pain or you have a slip disc or something, then you need to go to a therapist. You can't go to a regular yoga teacher. You can't do the regular asanas which make you bend all over the place. You can injure yourself. So you need to work with a therapist. There are many schools of tradition therapy in India. One is S. Vyasa in Bangalore. I think Kaivalya Dham in Pune also works with therapy. And then, of course, our tradition, Sri Krishnamacharya, we work actually extensively with therapy. And we joke about it that back pain is our bread and butter, but it's just a light joke. But so connect with one of the teachers, find a yoga therapist who knows how to handle back pain, is not treating it like physiotherapy or like a trainer. That's very important. Yoga should help the spine. The spine is the central nervous system. If I have to work with the mind, I have to work with the nervous system.
So I know that we have gone 10 minutes over our time slot. So I'm going to just launch, our closure poll, which is just give us feedback. So there is a poll to rate this session today and the time that you have invested today. Thank you very much, each one of you, and for attending. And certainly, thank you so much, Apurva, for
Thanks, Bhavna.
yet another fantastic session. I am certain that it would have been enabling, empowering, and meaningful for many. Do participate in the feedback. Do use the chat box to give us feedback, and if there are specific things that you would like more of, we can always work with the information, the questions, and see how we can bring that to you. All right. with that, thank you, Apurva, once again. And while we will wait for those of you to put in your ratings and comments, in order to know more about such sessions, since you have registered for this one, you will hear from us about the next ones. So we do reach out to people who have registered with us. However, the best thing is for you to register your email ID on our website, or connect with us on our social media platforms. So if you're on Facebook, that's one way. If you're on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, it's difficult to intimate about the upcoming sessions. However, if you want to know about the upcoming programs, then registering your email ID on our website, downloading our app, and registering on social media platforms can be one way. If you don't use any of these and would like to be a part of the WhatsApp community, you can let us know. But it is hard to reach out to you individually, so I'm going to encourage you to be a part of any one of these which work for you. And with that, do leave a comment or feedback, and
Thank you everyone for your lovely and kind comments. And yeah, I hope you begin this journey, and there's a lot more to explore.
Yes.
And hopefully we'll meet again.
Yes. Thank you very much. Have a very good evening. Have a good weekend. Stay safe and stay in touch. Thank you. I'm going to close the meeting. See you, Apurva.